been speaking with the Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola. And before we went on the break, he was bringing us the political side to housing, perhaps. And Kemi had some questions she wanted to ask him.
Right, because just as infrastructure is crucial for many Nigerians, housing is as well. And even though you have, challenged the United Nations housing deficit figures, which is going to about 28 million Nigerians said to be at par or set to be affected by the housing deficit in the country, there is, really yawning need for the government of the day to also speak to these issues and, tell Nigerians what is being offered, even as we build up to the next general election. What's your response, Honorable Minister?
Well, I won't be drawn into any further conversation about verifiable data. What I do know is that we need to plan and deliver services on the basis of verifiable data. So if somebody tells me in my own home that I have to feed 200 people every day, I have to ask the person, where are the people? How did you get the number? Because I know how many people live in my house. And that is the basis of planning. But be that as it may, I have alluded to some of the things we are doing in terms of the National Housing Project. We are now in what we call a season of completion and commissioning. So those projects are being completed, commissioned by the ministers from the states representing the president. So we've done Gombe, we've done Imo, we've done Ogun, I believe, we've done Osun, we've done Kano, we've done Kaduna, we've done Nasarawa, and a couple of other states. Some of the beneficiaries of those projects now are people you and I know very well, members of the 1994 Super Eagles, who had waited for almost 3 decades before the promise of housing made to them when they won laurels for Nigeria have finally been fulfilled by the Buhari administration. We have opened a portal, the National Housing Portal, which you can check on our ministry's website. For those who still want to buy, there are still houses for sale in 35 states, and you can see the price and the cost, the price and the type, sorry. But let us all be reminded as we discuss housing, that land, which is a major component in housing provision, is a state matter, not a federal matter. So states have a bigger responsibility, if you ask me, to roll out housing supply, because the people who need the houses are not federal people. They are residents, indigenes, and communities within state boundaries. And I am able to say that I know that across party lines, many states are also rolling out housing projects. But the other point to also make is that I insist that we must have a conversation about housing, not just on ownership, but also to address those people who live in rented accommodation and how their rent is paid. And I believe that the day we can bring the scheduling of rent payment closer to the time when incomes come in, which is at the end of each month, rather than 2 years in advance, we would have turned a major economic curve in Nigeria, because I believe it has an inflationary index to price through a passing on of cost. If I have to go and look for money that I have not earned in 2 years in advance, and I give it to you as my landlord, I'm going to recover that money somewhere. So you may have to come back and pay more for a particular service after collecting that money. And we all pass that cost around. And people are really vulnerable at that. Again, that is not a federal matter, but it is something that really just touches my being. And I wish I could do more about it, because rent control is a state responsibility. So there's so much going on in terms of housing supply, housing delivery, and the private sector, which is the biggest driver and supplier, is also pulling his weight. I can say that under this administration, because not only are some of them being supported through estate development loans by the Federal Mortgage Bank. The Shelter Afrique, which is a Pan-African organization of which Nigeria is a major shareholder, is also now seeing Nigeria as an investment destination for housing finance. And private sector operators are usually the beneficiaries of Shelter Afrique loans, not government directly. So there's a lot going on that we need to be acquainted with.
Right. Let's look at other matters now. It's been reported that you said you would retire from active politics in 2023. And we want to know if that's true and why. Because there were those who that you would retire from active politics in 2023. And we want to know if that is true and why you want to retire, because there were those who were looking forward to seeing you someday perhaps throw your hat into the ring of seeking to be president of this country.
Okay, so there are two things there. I told those who were looking for my hat that I don't wear a hat, I wear a cap. And since they were throwing hats, I didn't have a hat to throw. And one said he was going to make a hat for me. And I said, okay, if you want to make a hat for me, I like Etu. So make Etu. But he didn't bring the Etu hat. So and by the time all the hats were in the ring, there was no hat to throw. So, you know, next year will be 21 straight years that I've been a public servant. I have another address. I started out my career as a private legal practitioner. And I think that there's some time when you leave the public space. And we're talking about younger people. I came into public service at 39. Next year I will be 60. And I think it's time to yield the space for much younger and more ebullient people. That doesn't mean I'm leaving politics, but it is my strong desire to get out of the public service space. And I can play a lot of roles without holding a title. And I've made that very clear. I intend to continue to serve Nigeria, but I think I can do that without holding a title. I don't need a title to serve my country.
Well, 2023 is on. Right. We have 3 candidates that are, in the sense, they have thrown their hats on the ring.
They have hats.
Yes, they all have hats and caps and everything. Who says only hats can be thrown? You can throw caps, you can throw anything. Now,
well, Sam, you're now trying to spin the cap. All we know is hats. Yes. So for those who don't wear hats,
yeah, they don't wear hats. They can even throw themselves in the ring. You know, you know. So your candidate, as you have said before, is Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Without a doubt.
Why do you think he is the one this time?
Sam, you know that it is on the 28th that electioneering campaign will start.
This is not a campaign. This is
no. Just you've asked me a question, so let me answer you. So you see, a society that is rooted in law and order, where people play by the rules, is the society I like to live in. Those are the rules. 28 is how many days to go? 8 days to go. Bring me back. Then I will come and tell you all the reasons and more why Bola Tinubu is the man that I will endorse and trust to do this job.
And we will.
8 days. Right. 8 days. Don't worry, Sam.
I will take you on that.
and we will indeed be reaching out to you, Leonard Silk. But still talking about, well, topical issues. All right, the campaigns are days away. But then there are topical issues which you have also lent your voice to, especially the ASU strike. And we saw how the students across the country, how they were on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to air their grievances on the matter, and they have not relented. What are your thoughts on the lingering problem? Because some said you only addressed the fact that students were hitting the streets to protest. But what are your thoughts on the unresolved issues?
You see, it's unfortunate that we have this strike, But again, I am not going to get ahead of myself because I don't have all of the facts around the strike. I know that there are issues of a prior commitment made to them in the previous administration. I know there are issues of how they should be paid, which digital platform, whether it is IPs or not IPs. I know there are issues of autonomy, a lot of things. So I never got involved, and I try not to get involved in things where I don't have the facts upon which to make a judgment. So it was an oblique reference I made when I was explaining to commuters who were inconvenienced as a result of construction work on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which many channels, TV channels, including, I believe, yours, highlighted. And while I was explaining the cause of the gridlock, I then also said that I heard that students were planning to go and block the road in protest. And I said that their right to protest was legitimate. And I repeat that. But that right does not include a right to block the road. And I also repeat that because it is an offense under the Federal Highways Act. And I stand by what I say. I've been surprised that some people who claim to be public informants saying that, oh, Fashola said protest is illegal. I would never say such a thing. I was a governor. I managed protests. I was a student too. I protested. But blocking the road and protesting are two different things. And in no society, any civilized society in the world, will you have the right to go and block a road because you are protesting. Of course, you can achieve the same thing, which is to slow down traffic and live on the margins and the spirit of the law by protesting alongside the road. I'm sure every motorist will want to see you anyway, and that will slow down traffic, and your point is made. But to really go and barricade the road, I mean, excuse me, who does that in which society? And those kind of things, we must enlighten ourselves about these things. And yeah, I like to live in a lawful society. I hope that the crisis in the arising from the ASU strike ends soon. And for me, it is bad enough to have a crisis, but what will be most painful is to waste a crisis. So this crisis must not be wasted. And that, for me, is the positive side I look. How do we find an enduring solution? Because this is not the first time ASU has gone on strike. And all of us as Nigerians must look for different default buttons to hit when we are in discomfort. I agree that there may be cause for protest, but hey, shutting down everybody and the whole system, does it solve the problem? Those are things that those who know better about labor and union matters should address.
Right. Let's talk about the 2023 elections. And
Again?
yes.
Not campaign.
Not campaign now. Not campaign.
Okay.
Now. It's about our democracy, because one thing that gives room for a thriving democracy is a vibrant opposition. And you are quoted as saying recently that what we see is not a vibrant opposition, so to speak. And I'm wondering what you think gave room or rise to that.
Well, I think again, you see, it's a very fine line. You know, people forget that opposition is also part of government. People forget that. Government is not just the majority. Government governs with the majority. But oftentimes they're not. Okay, when we pass the national budget, for example, have you ever heard that opposition says they don't approve the budget? They don't say so. But what critical pathway, what critical differences, what critical input do they say, no, this 1 naira is better spent here than there? When did you hear that? So when did the opposition say, okay, majority has brought its budget, the same 10 naira that the majority wants to spend on this is where we think it should be spent? Did you hear that? Have you ever heard that? That's the kind of opposition I would like to play. When a policy comes, so that is the kind of opposition that keeps the majority even on his toes, that he can go into a public debate and have eggs on his faces. So these are for me, and even if and this is not limited to those in parliament. When as the opposition party, okay, let's go back. Everybody remembers what Buhari promised: security, economic, corruption. Ask the Nigerian people what the opposition party that they can remember has promised them in 16 years. How many of the promises they made can they remember? So the APC, and again, I don't even want to go there. I don't want to start a campaign. So let me stop. Let me just stop, please.
Well, I'm sure that looking ahead to May, you have a sense of where you want all the projects to be at. For instance, I'm looking at the second Niger Bridge and its iconic potential for the Nigerian, infrastructure story and so on. Where have you really pegged every activity you have as a structured person by the time you are bowing out?
Oh, if the objective was May next year, I am sure that the second Niger Bridge will be in use by then. You see, but my target and the commitment we made is to see if we can open it to traffic before the end of this year. And we still think that is feasible. And the reason I say that is this: the bridge has two main components. The one component is the bridge itself from the Asaba end of the river to the Onitsha end of the river. That's finished. So you can drive on it now. That's finished. The other components are the connecting roads from the Onitsha end to the bridge head and from the Asaba end to the bridge head. Now, the one that is still giving us a little problem is the Asaba end, because we are still trying to resolve compensation issues, community issues, but we have to sand fill. So dredgers are there right now as I speak. The rain has delayed us a little bit, but in a matter of days, hopefully we should start. And then once we establish the land on which to build the road, it's just about a 3 or 4 kilometer connection that allows you from the Asaba end to join the bridge if you don't want to use the old bridge for now. So, and the land has to settle before you can build on it, but there's a technology to accelerate that. And I still think that that is feasible between now and December. It gives us roughly about almost 100 days plus or minus. So that's where we are. But as for May, certainly we would have been done and dusted with it. But let me just say in relation to that, that we are now in what I call a season of completion and commissioning. And you will see what we have been doing in the last few months. As I said, commissioning housing projects. We have also been handing over road projects. F1 like Erimo Iwaraja Road in Osun was recently completed and handed over. Isoko Ring Road in Delta State was completed and handed over. Sections of the Adeja Unguru Road in between Jigawa and Yobe State were completed and handed over. Sections of the Numan Yola Road, the Gombe to Katungu were also recently handed over, and so on and so forth. So,
right.
And this has been the process since December last year. So we're winding down really, and we will finish as many things as we can before we go and hand the rest to the next team.
Let's quickly spare the remaining 1 minute we have left for this interview to talk about how you or what innovations you brought on board in these federal ministries you headed in sanitizing the open bidding process of this contract. You spoke earlier about corruption, and you as a partner of the Buhari administration. How do things stand now?
Well, the reforms that are still that I'm still agitating for because of the way that the public procurement law currently stands. It does not help to grow local capacity. Those who are largely benefiting are the well-established companies, and I hope that reform will happen sooner rather than later to open up the space for smaller businesses, especially Nigerian-owned businesses, to be able to benefit. This law was made, I think, Public Procurement Act 2007. I think it's time to review that law to give effect to the local content policy led by the president in his executive order 7. So you have a conflict between current policy and old law. And again, you need bipartisan agreement to change the law.
Right. Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola San, thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
And you too.